4. This is now 4 videos in a row that we've talked about Luminara. Welcome back to the class, everyone. It's a pretty fair assumption that whenever we get any new piece of content in Galaxy of Heroes, raid or otherwise, that we're going to need to farm up 1 or 2 teams to be able to interact with it fully. Well, the problem with the new up-and-coming Order 66 raid is that almost all of the teams involved in it are brand new. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in today's video. So this video will really be split into 2 parts. The first part of it, we will spend a little bit of time in a spreadsheet really analyzing why this is a problem, and even more so why it's kind of a unique problem. In addition to that, I'll also be providing some solutions that at least can serve as constructive criticism for CG, and while I don't believe they'll actually be able to take it and do anything with it because it's so soon, hopefully this can be used as rhetoric for the next raid or following raids after that. That being said, we do have some disclaimers before we move on to the spreadsheet, and the first thing is, this really is meant to be constructive, and it really is meant to be criticism. I, many times in the past, have said good things about CG's decisions because I believe they were good. If those comments are to have any type of weight whatsoever, that also means that I have to say critical things when I believe mistakes have been made, and this is exactly what I'm doing. So this is not necessarily calling for a boycott or anyone's job or anything like that, but at the same time, I can't really just let these things go by without saying anything. The second is that I also do realize that lore will never be perfect. One of the big problems with this raid is that a lot of the characters that have been chosen are either loose at best or just completely unrelated. More on that later. But that being said, I do realize that there has to be some wiggle room. If we look at the Naboo raid, for example, the only team that really makes 100% sense to be going up against the droids on Naboo, it's Gungans. So there has to be some flexibility there, but I think that this raid has crossed the line too far. In addition to that, I also do realize that CG needs to make money, meaning that there were always going to be teams that were required for this raid, as we said at the very beginning of the video, and there were probably going to be multiple. There were probably going to be Galactic Legends, there were probably going to be Conquest characters. Again, I just think they took it a little bit too far with 4, if not 5 of the teams needing to be farmed up immediately, or just not even available to be farmed at all. And the last thing is, when we do get into the solution part of this video, which is towards the back half, I'm not necessarily suggesting that CG should have done all the things, but I'm going to be giving 5 different options, and maybe a combination of them would have made this a lot better, or at a bare minimum, a little bit easier to interact with. So now that we've got all the disclaimers out of the way, we need to talk a little about what this problem is with the teams and how we can actually see that. And for that, we have a handy dandy spreadsheet that I put together. Now, this is specifically for the free-to-play community that, while again have not always been able to just immediately max the raid, that's never really been a thing, they've always been able to interact with it fairly well. This time around, that is going to be very difficult, especially for those who are not endgame free-to-play. So what I've done here is I've stacked up the 5 new teams that are going to be in the raid. The second Bad Batch team, not the first, Dark Side Clones plus Tarkin, Master Mace and his new team plus Ayla, and then the 2 pirate squads, one led by a Conquest character and one led by a Galactic Legend. That was all already stated to us in a previous forum post that I'm not going to go over again. Now, what I've done here is I've shown the date for the final character from each of these teams that you have to farm, and when they became free-to-play farmable, aka when they hit a node. Then, assuming you do 0 refreshes, I've also done the math for how many days it'll take you to be able to finish that character after the marquee event, and these are the ending dates we end up with, and we know that the raid is going to be ending on 6/25, roughly, from what CG has told us, meaning from all that information, we're able to deduce how much time we'll be able to use these teams in the raid, and how long we'll have to wait / farm them. And if you're not doing any refreshes, but you're still being intentional about the raid, you're still focusing your energy there, you're still focusing your farms there and your gear, it's pretty bad. This is where the problem really meets the road, so to speak. You can see with Bad Batch, it's not all that bad. Crosshair has been farmable already for a while now, back in the beginning of May. But even if you are just farming him right out the gate, it's still going to only finish in roughly October, assuming normal drop rates, meaning that you're only going to have the second Bad Batch team for 240 days. That is quite a bit, But at the same time, when you realize that it's going to take you about 125 days to actually get there, that's not ideal. In addition to that, it actually gets much worse when we start to analyze the Dark Side clones, Master Mace, and the second pirate team. Because now when you look at the dates for these, you're actually going to be spending more time waiting for them to become accessible, plus farming them, than you are actually going to have them interacting in the raid. In fact, by the time most of us, free to play, get the Pirate Galactic Legend, there might already be a new raid announced because it'll be about 3 months out. So yeah, this is problematic. And again, I realize raids before have always had characters to unlock or new teams, but having them be all 5 of them and having some of them be stretched out so far, this is not going to be good for player engagement. Again, I realize CG needs to make money and that spenders should have an advantage. At least that is the model of the game. That is a fact that I have accepted. But I think there were things they could have done a little bit differently, and we'll go over those in the second part of the video. Now, for anyone who was wondering, I did also run the math for anyone who is doing a single refresh on every single hard node for these characters, what the timeline looks like, and it does look considerably better. In fact, for every single team out there, it is going to have more time, except for the Pirate Galactic Legend, more time actually in the raid than you are going to take farming and waiting for them to become farmable. Now, if we go down to the double refresh, the odds get even better and better. So this is, again, not meant to be doom and gloom, but just to kind of state where the facts are and how much you'll actually be able to utilize the characters in the raid, despite the fact that they are going to take so long to be able to get. Now, that is the first part of the video, talking about the actual problem. Now, what I want to talk about for the rest is some possible solutions. And again, I don't necessarily think that CG will actually do anything with this, but I think it's important that we at least open up this conversation. So what do I mean by solutions? And the solutions really revolve around opening up for older, lesser teams that should not be performing nearly as well as the newer ones. So for example, the current team that is required in the raid is the second Bad Batch team. And this, from a lore perspective, kind of works. It doesn't work super well, but Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they were not technically at the Battle of Naboo when fighting the droids alongside the Gungans. That technically didn't happen, but close enough. They were on Naboo, they were fighting Maul. Same can be said about a lot of the other characters in that raid, where it was close enough. And in fact, this actually really feels reminiscent of Magna Guard and the droid team. Magna Guard was absolutely not present there, but the other droids were so close enough. Bad Batch, very similar theme. Bad Batch themselves actually have aided in saving Jedi from Order 66. I believe was the first episode of Season 1. But again, that would have been this Bad Batch squad. So something they could have done is they could have just opened up the raid entirely to Bad Batch, not been the specific 5 new characters, and they could have gone in and given specific bonuses to Omega or to Hunter or to Crosshair with clauses in there that, hey, if these are the 4 allies, then they get some super extreme bonus that helps you hit the max score really easily. And if you want to try to remod and do all these fancy things with the old Bad Batch squad, then maybe you can get, I don't know, a third or half as good a score as the other team. But the issue is, CG's not really letting us do that. They're saying you pretty much have to have this team ready to go or you're not allowed in. I guess it's worth saying that there is now a level 0 for the raid, which does allow you to take in characters that are sub 7 stars. But that's just, it's going to be very, very little. Gear 12 being the first requirement for level 1 really locks out any of these characters that it's going to take us months and months and months to farm up. The next solution that I would like to talk about is the fact the Tarkin/clone team, again, is going to fall into the camp of pretty inaccessible. Now, from a lore perspective, I think this one probably is just fine. I realize Scorch and CX2 were not there, but Disguised Clone and Oppo, they were very much there. They were fighting on the other side, but that's fine. Scout Trooper was allowed in the Endor raid, as well as the droids in the Naboo raid. I guess we weren't allowed to use a Crate Dragon in the Crate Dragon raid, but that's a little bit too much to ask. At any rate, though, one of the other options they could have done is they could have allowed for some just very generic Imperial troopers, because at the end of the day, again, if we're wanting to bend lore just a little bit, the clone troopers were Empire, and they were also technically troopers. So, you put those two words together, and what do you get? Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, Imperial troopers. So they could have allowed some of these no-name ones to just fit under Tarkin before you actually get the new ones built up. Again, my expectation would be that this team performs like garbage compared to this team, but at least you would be able to interact with it a little bit so that you could, do something and enjoy the raid, get a better score up than what could essentially be a 0 if these characters have not been worked up at all. Next up is going to be the pirates, and I alluded to this in the very beginning. This one's a pretty big problem from a lore standpoint. And again, I realize CG, Galaxy of Heroes, it is never going to 100% follow lore. That is part of the game. There's release cadences, there's game balance, there's a lot of different things. This one's bad though. Like, this one's bad. I mean, I haven't read every single legend and canon book out there, but gosh, I cannot think of a time when a pirate aided in even saving a Jedi during like the time period that Order 66 would have been happening. I guess Hondo and Ezra were kind of on the same side when the Inquisitors were after him at one point. I mean, it's just such a far stretch. And then for the Galactic Legend, I'm not against a new Galactic Legend being a raid. That's happened multiple times. That's a fair expectation. And I'll say this too. I'm actually really jazzed about having pirates in the game, and I'm even cool with having a pirate Galactic Legend. Like, that's fine. I've seen a lot of people been a little bit upset about that. I think that's really cool. It's really an odd choice, and I realize they're wanting to push it for content, but it's an odd choice to be in the Order 66 raid, considering the connection there is literally nothing. It's not like an almost or a close enough like Magna Guard alongside the other droids. It's just completely out. So one of the things that they could have done is just picked another team that would have had somewhat of a relation to Order 66. I think the Inquisitors might have been a good option. Maybe, you know, Sans Riva, because she was kind of on the other side of things at that point, at least in the temple. And maybe this wasn't the best team. Maybe they could make it. Maybe they could have used another one. But I think doing away with pirates entirely probably would have gone over better. And even then, they still would have had 3 new teams to leverage between Galactic Legend Mace, the new clones with Tarkin, as well as the new Bad Batch squad. And I feel like that's very much in line with what they did in the previous raid, where obviously you had the Queen Amidala team, you had the Gungan team, and then you kind of had Kelleron Beck and Kiadi-Mundi, which was kind of a premium team, kind of not. The next thing that I want to talk about, or next problem I guess I want to address, is the fact that we have a large amount of Jedi Vanguard that are also allowed in alongside a lot of these hard-to-access characters. The problem is, they kind of suck. And yes, I did pick on her profile specifically. But yeah, I'm actually really doubting whether that 15 that we're going to be able to use, which is Jedi Vanguard after the other 4 that we already discussed, I'm really confused to whether or not that's actually going to be able to do anything at all. And I guess that's kind of what I'm asking for with the original Bad Batch squad, as well as the Imperial Troopers. But it's going to be a little bit disheartening if the only team that me, Calvin, can use when the raid first opens up is Kelleron Beck, Barriss, Shaak Ti, and then 2 of these guys. I don't know. I feel like they could have done other things. And one of the things that I thought it would have been really cool to do from a lore perspective is Jedi Master Kenobi and Grandmaster Yoda. Now, I know that they're not... Well, Grandmaster Yoda is a super accessible character. JMK, not as accessible, but a lot of people have him. Like, I feel like more people have JMK built up than, say, Jedi Knight Guardian and I'm a Gundai. Not that they would even be good, even if they were built up. And I guess there was even another solution here too, like they did with Luminar and Kit Fisto in the current Naboo raid. They actually specifically designed the raid to leverage certain things that they were doing. And I looked through all the modifiers that are coming up in this next raid, and I can't really see anything that is going to really bolster Luminar, Kit Fisto, I'm a Gundai, Eth Koth, the rest of these, to actually be able to do something. I mean, they get offense when they gain buffs, and I guess they have buffs, but at the same time, is the raid really going to be situated in such a scenario that they're going to be able to compete with some of these really good squads like Tarkin clones, as well as the new Bad Batch squad? So that's something that I would like to have seen, like leverage an older Galactic Legend instead of kind of forcing in a newer pirate one. And this, I guess we'll just, point this out to say it. I think this is completely fair. Having a new legendary character, a new conquest character, new marquees, this is completely within reason. Like, again, every single raid that we've gotten has had something new on the table, like a legendary conquest character, both. That seems honestly completely fine. I just wish that they would have made some more openings for people to actually be able to interact with the raid. Because right now, I feel like the overall sentiment in the community is that why even bother? And why even bother being excited? And it's generated a lot of negativity that I don't think was 100% necessary. I realize that we do have a tendency to be to criticize even when, again, they have to make money. But this just seems like a little bit of an overshot and hopefully it won't happen again, or maybe they can even do something to fix it in the year that it'll be running. But thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. But until the next time, stay awesome.